everybody, and welcome to the Friday Night Drive Western Suburbs podcast. I'm Josh Welge here with Joel Boenitz. Joel, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm still trying to get used to, this cold weather. Still trying to recover from Saturday night when I was out in the rain the entire time. But, we're fine, all things considered. I haven't gotten pneumonia yet, so I'm happy about that.
It's always a good thing. Yeah. If you can live your week by that, I haven't gotten pneumonia yet. That's a good thing. But yeah, I think it took us 11 weeks, but we finally got that, nasty, cold football weather, rain type situation. And I was one of the fortunate ones that had the 1:00 kickoff because I was back home reading stories and I could just see the rain outside. And I'm like, I'm really glad I'm here right now. But anyway, a good weekend of football that we'll go over and look at the quarterfinals. And of course, I'm going to start. I want to start with the game that you were at Saturday night, in the rain, in the dreary, in the cold, and man, a hell of a game. I mean, as I expected it to, and I mean, I kind of had a little bit of doubt on St. Charles North going into that game, and they as they do sometimes, they dig a bit of a hole. But they come back and win, and they win in thrilling fashion as they do. Tell me about that game.
Yeah, I think pretty much everybody heading into that game, it was a very 50-50 matchup between these two teams. I know it was one of the highly contested matches of, the second round. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. St. Charles North came from behind to get the victory. They won 26-23. They scored 19 consecutive points after going down 16-7. And they really played in the elements as well as they could have in this game. I mean, they started out a little rough. They allowed 2 early touchdowns. I believe they allowed 250 rushing yards in the first half, which was not ideal for them at all. But they had 3 consecutive turnovers. They had an interception of Trey Taylor, which was the 4th one he's thrown all season. So kind of a big deal to do that. And then they had back-to-back drives where they hopped on a fumble on a mishandled snap because the fact it was raining. But they made as much as, or they kind of took that momentum of those turnovers and they turned it into points. And to see that turnaround that they had and to limit Carmel to only 23 points. No, of course the conditions definitely didn't help with that, but to limit that offense that has done so well this season to only 23 points, I mean, it's a huge accomplishment for St. Charles North to make it back to the quarterfinals.
It seemed like that game made it very much we're going to run a football type of game, right? It didn't seem like there was that many passes in that game.
There were surprisingly a bit more passes than I expected. But there were a lot more incompletions than I thought. I think both teams combined for, I believe, 4 completed passes in the first half. Trey Taylor kind of warmed up in the second half. I believe he had 6 completions, including a 65-yard passing touchdown to cut that lead to 3 points. But yeah, there were a couple more passes than I expected to see there, but for the most part, it was a very rush-heavy game.
Yeah, and a very good win for St. Charles North. A very good win, an impressive win, one of the more impressive ones of the weekend. Another one that was in the 7A bracket, the game that I was at on Saturday afternoon, Downers Grove North, they kind of turned the tables on their regular season loss. Glenbard West get a 19-7 win. And I know leading up to the game, I know the discussion that we had was, okay, the first game, Downers Grove North didn't have Owen Lanzu, their quarterback that's going to Minnesota. So maybe that's going to enable their offense to do a little bit more. But really, the thing that I wondered about was their defense. Could they slow down Glenbard West because they weren't able to do it that first meeting? And since that time, their best lineman, Aiden Selecki, that's going to Purdue, he's gone for the year with a knee injury. But really, I mean, not that Lanzu was not good on Saturday, but really the story of the game was their defense. I mean, their defense just did not let Glenbard West bust any big plays. They really made them drive down the field and 2 yards here, 3 yards there. They made them pass a lot more than Glenbard West wants to. They're able to get 2 fourth down stops in the first half. And really the biggest key is they're able to turn them over. The first game, Downers Grove North committed a couple turnovers that led to scores. This time, Downers Grove North, they got a fumble recovery deep inside Glenbard West side, able to turn it a touchdown. And then late in the game, when they were only leading by a touchdown, they get a pick six from Oliver Thulin. That's pretty much salted the game away. Downers Grove North going back to the quarterfinals for the third straight year. And it's funny, I wrote about it in my story. I mean, it's been a year for Downers Grove North, and their coach, Joe Rennie, said it's been a long year because they came into the season with really big expectations. They have 6 kids, I believe, that were sophomores on the state runner-up 2 years ago that are still playing this year. They came in, I think them and Batavia were sort of like co-number ones in 7A, according to the press going into the year. And then they lose Owen Lanza in week 2. He was gone for 4 full games. He comes back week 7. The same night he comes back, Aiden Selecki goes down. Still they would have a good season. They were 7-2 during the season. But they, took a tough loss to Glenbard West. They lost to Lions as well. But still, I mean, in the scope of everything that happened and Glenbard West having the season they had, you're thinking, okay, it's an upset, but not really, I don't think. I mean, if you would have told me going the year that Downers North is in the quarterfinals and beat Glenbard West, I would not have been surprised because they had big expectations. It's just been a crazy year for them. They've gone through a lot of adversity this year, but at the end of the day, they're still standing and they're back in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I think, kind of heading into this season, I think, if you would have told me that was also the case, that Downers Grove North and Glenbard West would be playing in that second round matchup, I also wouldn't have been surprised. I would have been more surprised about the fact that Glenbard West was the number 2 seed and Downers Grove North was not. I think that was probably the more surprising thing about this matchup. And, to see, I know the big thing that was talked about heading into it was the fact that Owen Lansu cannot, in fact, play defense for Downers Grove North. And that was going to be the key in this game. And to see the defense show up, especially after giving up 35 points in that first matchup earlier this season, I mean, that was a huge turnaround for Downers Grove North. And it might just be the push that they need to go even further and possibly make it back to the state title game.
Yeah, and the thing about Downers Grove North too is that, I mean, obviously Owen Lanzu gets the headlines. He's a Division I quarterback, but really they hang their head on their defense. So their defense has been really good the last few years. They do a good job. I mean, I know Selecki's hurt. They still got Will Vallo, who's going to Illinois. Caden Chirelli, a really good linebacker for that linebacker DB. Oliver Thulin, kind of a playmaker on both sides of the ball. I mean, defense is really where that's their pride is their defense. Obviously, Lansu does a lot of great things on offense, but really that's their calling card, and it was last Saturday. So a very good win for them. Another game last weekend that, maybe, all right, if we're going to go by seeds, kind of an upset, but maybe not a huge surprise. That St. Francis Prairie Ridge game, rematch of last year's game. St. Francis comes out on top again, and man, that was one of the games of the day. I mean, I was reading Chris Casey's story. There was 9 consecutive touchdowns between the two teams at one point, and finally, St. Francis gets a big, Peyton Shipley with a fumble recovery. They go on to a 41-38 win. Man, great win for St. Francis going to the quarterfinals, and now they get Chicago King in the quarterfinals, which pretty good chance they're going to be going back to the semifinals for the 4th straight year.
Yeah, and I think the big thing of that game is the fact that Brock Phillip was rushing for a lot of those touchdowns. I mean, he finished with 6 touchdowns on the game. 4 of them came on the ground. He headed into that game with only 4 rushing touchdowns. So just to kind of see how that offense has evolved throughout the season in order to keep up with Prairie Ridge for the 2nd consecutive season, I mean, that's a really good sign for the St. Francis team. Obviously, Brock Phillip came in from Geneva prior to this season. My football notebook, I have a feature coming up on him. Should be out later today. But, kind of talking about how he's evolved with this offense, he's got a good connection with that wide receiver room. When I talked with Coach McMillan, he kind of talked about how pretty much after every game for 2 hours, he's talking with the offensive coordinators about how he can get better. And I think that might have been the key for how they were able to keep up and surpass Prairie Ridge at the end. So kind of seeing how that offense has evolved, especially after some early struggles in the season, it's really good to see, that St. Francis team kind of come back this season.
Yeah, Yeah, Brock Phillip. I mean, I remember week one, even against their come from behind win against Kenwood. I mean, he impressed me. He could throw the ball, but he can run the ball too. He had some big runs late in that Kenwood game. They're a very diverse offense. Obviously, the receivers are their bread and butter, but Tivius Caldwell is a really good kind of a battering ram running back, and then Brock Phillip running the ball. They're as explosive an offense as there is out there. It's just a matter, can the defenses get enough stops? and they're able to get just enough stops to beat Prairie Ridge last week. So very good win. St. Francis moving on. Other teams moving on. Game that you saw Friday night, Batavia, Glenbard East. With respect to Glenbard East, I'd like to say I was surprised at that final score. I was not. I expected Batavia to win handily, and they do. They just continue to roll. I love that team right now, the way they're playing. Seems like everything's going for them right now.
Yeah, it seemed like in the first half that was pretty much the case. I mean, looking at kind of the stat sheet I was looking at, Michael Vanderloop completed passes to 8 different receivers in that first half. 8. That's quite a bit for that roster. So he's spreading the ball out everywhere. They've got a few running backs that they can go to. They've just got so many different weapons that they can utilize on offense. And it's just one of those things where it's like, how can you stop them? It's kind of hard to do that, because if you stop somebody else is going to show up, and then boom, there you go. I will have to give credit to Glenbard East. They did fight back in the end. They had 21, or they did outscore Batavia in the second half. Michael Nee finished with 313 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. So it was still a very impressive performance in the second half. It was just that first half. They could not get anything going. And Batavia took full advantage of it. And they're back in the semifinal, or they're back in the quarterfinals for the 10th time since 2011, if I remember correctly. Wow. So they're pretty used to this.
Yeah, no, Glenbard East had a great season. I think this is their 7th straight playoff appearance. I think it's the first time it's ever been done in that program. So they really got it rolling at Glenbard East, and a great year. And we're going to be seeing Michael Nee on the basketball court pretty soon, doing some good things for the basketball program. But Batavia moves on. Another team, no surprise, moving on, although it was kind of a tough one for a half. Nazareth beating Wayne Warrenville South. That was another one of those games, kind of similar to yours, in that it was played in the rain. A little bit earlier start than your game, but not rain nonetheless. And it was a close game. I think Wheaton Warrenville South led late in the first half. Then the second half, Naz kind of turned to their ground game, and Charles Calhoun and Julian Watson each with some touchdowns in that game, and a good tough win for Nazareth going on the road at a good team in the rain. I mean, I kind of wondered about that game. Like, sometimes the rain, it's sort of as an what's the word? Kind of like an equalizer. It makes games where you might think one team is significantly better than the other. It kind of evens the playing field a little bit, and it seemed like it did in that game. That and Wheaton Warrenville South playing a good game, but Naz, I mean, they obviously can throw the ball with their quarterback Jackson Fayoa. They have some great receivers, but they can run the ball pretty well too, and they've run the ball really effectively down the stretch this season.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, with the elements, obviously that adds a different, kind of context to the game. And I mean, you mentioned it. They kind of came from behind. They were held scoreless in the first half. It was 7-0 after one half. But I mean, 28 consecutive points will definitely give a team an advantage. And I mean, it's one thing to kind of look at the one thing that Nazareth will kind of look at, video in the coming days, just be like, okay, this is how we can adjust this, and this, because you never know with the Chicago winters if they're going to experience it again. Who knows? It might be snowing again in a couple of weeks, but we'll see. But definitely a good win for Nazareth at the end.
Definitely that. Before we take a break, one more game I wanted to touch on was, got to talk about it, Burlington Central getting back into the quarterfinals for the first time since 2006. Beating a tough Harlem team again on that Saturday night in the rain, and Landon Arnold, man, quarterback, not just throwing the ball, but running the ball. I think I saw he had 80 yards on the final drive that kind of salted the game away, including a 56-yarder. And it's funny, our Alex Kentucky that was there in that game, he wrote about in the lead of his story that, Burlington Central's got a big lineman, Zach Holgren. He's like 6'5", almost 300 pounds, but he's like, he's like, I don't try to get in the way of Landon when he's running a ball because he'll just like run you over. And obviously a really impressive performance by Landon Arnold and Burlington moving on.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a pretty by the book win for Burlington Central, even if the conditions were not ideal. I mean, defense did pretty well down the stretch, kind of held Harlem kind of stagnant in that second half. Rush game was doing really well. I think they finished with 277 rushing yards, if I remember that correctly. And yeah, now they're back in the quarterfinals for the first time since 2006, before any of these kids were born. that was something that Coach Yossi said at the end of Kentucky's stories. None of these kids were alive last time that we made it this far. But more impressive was the fact that they were 1-8 their freshman season, and now they're 10-1. They have a chance to make their first semifinal for the first time in school history. Pretty great turnaround from that program.
Yeah, really impressive for Burlington Central in that. I mean, they joined the Fox Valley Conference several years ago, and they were competitive, but they took their lumps too, and the rise that they've had to near the top of that league, and then now in the quarterfinals. I mean, really great work by Burlington Central's football program. So, and a very good win for them. I think we're going to take a quick break here from our sponsors. We come back, we'll talk about some quarterfinal matchups.
SGKR Injury Attorneys tackles the toughest cases. I'm Matt Rundio. When life throws a flag, we go on offense to protect your rights. Don't get sidelined. Score a touchdown with SGKR. Visit us at sgkr.law.
At Oliver's, we are proud to serve our community. We serve up great customer service, quality products, ease of shopping, and we serve up delicious barbecued sandwiches at our fundraiser cookouts. So stop by Oliver's, 748 North Brenton and Dixon, and help fund our local clubs and events.
In Illinois and into Iowa, the story of Shaw Media is a story of trust. Since 1851, we've been informing, connecting, and reflecting the communities we serve, large and small, rural and urban, suburban, and river towns alike, with dozens of local newspapers, radio stations, magazines, and specialty brands like Friday Night Drive and Starve Rock Country. We meet people wherever they are. We shine a light on local government. We celebrate Friday night touchdowns. We tell the stories that shape your day, from neighborhood heroes to the Chicago Bears. But what truly sets us apart? It's our people. The award-winning journalists, broadcasters, and storytellers who live here, work here, and care deeply about what matters most to you. We don't just report the news. We're part of the fabric of the places we serve, from the Mississippi to the Illinois, from the Fox all the way to the chain of lakes. Trusted for generations, still earning it every day. Shaw Media, your most trusted local source.
Back on the Friday Night Drive Western Suburbs podcast, we look ahead to the quarterfinal matchups. And Joel, I'll start with the game that you're going to be at on Saturday, a Duquesne Conference rematch. Glenbard North playing Batavia. These two teams met in week 3. Batavia coming out with a 41-13 win. Batavia, we've talked about just the role they're on right now. They're playing great. Glenbard North, on the other hand, a really great story, obviously. 0-9 2 years ago, 2-7 last year, winless in the Duquesne Conference last year, and now they're back in the quarterfinals. Donato Gatsis, he's over 2,000 yards rushing on the season now, and you're going to get a chance to see him on Saturday. I got to see him in the first round. What do you make of this matchup?
I mean, I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup. I mean, if you asked me before the season, if you told me before the season that there were going to be two Duquesne Conference teams playing in the quarterfinal against each other, I don't think Glenbard North was going to be the first team I was going to pick. But it's really just a great turnaround from Glenbard North. I mean, you talk about Donato Gatsis, over 2,000 yards. Surprisingly enough, though, the only game where he did not have over 100 rushing yards, this time I know this for sure, it was against Batavia in week 3. He had 82 rushing yards. It's the lowest he's been at this season. I'm interested to see how Glenbard North kind of turns that around. Actually, funnily enough, I was looking at this. This is only the second time in postseason history that two Duquesne Conference teams are facing off against each other. The first time was back in 2018 when St. Charles North defeated Wheat Warrenville South in the quarterfinals 21-10. And the thing about that regular season matchup, St. Charles North lost it to Wheat Warrenville South. I'm sure Glenbard North wants to copy that fate and take down Batavia in the quarterfinals, make their first semifinal. But I'm really interested to see how this game turns out between these two teams.
Well, I definitely think if Glenbard North is going to have a chance to reverse the first game of the first meeting of the season, I think they're going to need more than 82 yards from Donato Gotsis. I mean, I'm pretty confident in saying that they're going to need to really, control the clock, use that running game, play good defense, and not make this a Batavia scores 41 points. Because I have pause to think that Glenbard North can win like a 41-38 game. That doesn't seem like a game that they would win. But they're playing really well right now. They're playing with a lot of confidence, but so is Batavia as well. So should be fun. Kind of cool to see. First round, I'm not a big fan of like the rematches of conference. They get in the quarterfinals, whatever. All bets are off then. I mean, just play football then. So should be a lot of fun. Glenbard North at Batavia. Another rematch, although from not this year. Montini is hosting Coal City. And I talked to Montini coach Mike Bukowski on Saturday, and I said, have you ever played Coal City before? And he's been in Montini a little while, and he said, it's actually the rematch of the 2004 Class 4A state championship. Montini beat Coal City for Montini's first state championship. So he did not think Coal City has ever made their way up to Montini, and if he says so, it probably has not happened. So. Coal City is playing really well right now. They won maybe the best game of the second round, 49-42 at Dixon. But now they go to Montini, and man, I don't know. it could be a different animal a little bit. Montini is just on such a roll right now. The defense is playing well, but that offense is just so explosive with Izzy Abrams. Ton of speed on the outside, running backs working well. They look like a team it's gonna take a huge effort to go into Montini and get a win.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Obviously, we know how good Montini's offense has been all season. I mean, you don't really have any other team that you can say out-dueled or out-offensed Carmel this season. I mean, besides St. Charles North now. But I think if there's one team that could potentially keep up with them, I think it might be this Coal City team. I mean, looking at their 9 wins on the season, they had 1 win where they scored 40 points. They had 1 win where they scored 56 points, and then they have 7 wins where they won or where they scored 49 points. So they're known for scoring lots of points, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see another 56-55 thriller with Montini getting out on top. But I'm really interested to see how this game turns out, and I fully expect it to be an offensive masterpiece between these two teams.
Well, I think there'll definitely be points scored in this game because it definitely seems reports, and I know Montini can score the points. And unlike last Saturday, the weather is looking like it might be a decent game or decent weather on Saturday. I know you had tweeted last weekend this could be my last game of 50-degree weather. I don't think so. I think you're going to get another Saturday where the weather's not so bad.
I would really appreciate that after this past Saturday.
No, I would agree with that. After last Saturday, there was some pretty miserable conditions, but anyway, that should be a really good one. Another good one involving a local Chicago Catholic League team is IC Catholic. They're going up to Byron. Should be a great 3A quarterfinal. I know Byron has been one of the class of that classification the last few years. I think I read on Russ Hodges' notebook that they only have 4 losses in the last 4 years. IC Catholic handed one of them. They beat them pretty handily in the 2022 class 3A semifinals. I was there. It was a 35-0 win. They won pretty convincingly. I think Byron beat them the year before that. In the same round. So there's a history between these two programs. Byron, great running back, Caden Considine. If you don't know about him, you need to know about him. One of the better running backs in the state. IC, on the other hand, man, they got that talk about offenses. They got that offense rolling right now with Nate Lang throwing to Grant Bowen. So very interested to see how IHSA Catholic does. I mean, they're a very young team, a lot of good young talent, but now they got to go on the road to Byron. Tough place to play, tough team to play. Can they get it done and move into the semifinals?
Yeah, and I think the big thing is with Byron is you look at their record the past couple of years. You kind of mentioned it, kind of those 4 losses. You look at it, or their playoff runs that they've been on. They've either won a state championship or they've lost to a Catholic League team, and that ruined their playoff run. So this might be the game that kind of decides who's going to win this state title. If Byron wins, there's a good chance that they could go 14-0 again. But, I expect this to be a very hard-fought match by both of these teams, and I'm excited to see the outcome of it.
Yeah, I mean, last year Byron lost that game to Montini that I was at. I mean, it really did kind of decide the 3A state championship game. Is one of the best games that I've covered. It came down to a 2-point conversion. Montini was able to stop in the end. I mean, if this Montini IC game is anything as good as that game, then fans in Byron are going to be in for a treat. Should be a lot of fun. I think IC is going to definitely be able to score is, can they stop Byron, which is very difficult to do. They run that wing T with Caden Constantine and the quarterback so well. So, we'll see. A very good matchup up there in Byron. Another game that I'm very curious about is at St. Charles North. They had that very good win on Saturday. Well, congratulations. Now you got to go to Brother Rice. So that'll be a Saturday night game. St. Charles North obviously playing well, but Brother Rice, man, they really laid it on Jacobs last week. They have a very good quarterback that's going to Army, but really the where their bread is buttered is their defensive line for Brother Rice is as nasty as any in the state. So tough challenge for St. Charles North. But you know what? After last Saturday, I don't put it past them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we kind of talked about it. St. Charles North has been counted out a few times this year, and then of course they come back and they win it. And they proved it again last week. I talked with a couple of the kids, and they kind of mentioned, they're like, hey, we know the Catholic League is tough. We've known that for as long as we've been here, but at the end of the day, they still bleed the same blood as us. They're still high school football players. We can still beat them. So they have the confidence at St. Charles North, and especially taking down Carmel, and that's of course led by one of the top quarterbacks in the state, in Trey Taylor. That's definitely a big confidence boost for them. And I know they have to travel into Chicago to take on Brother Rice, but I think they're going in there with their heads held high. I think they're going to do their best to try and take them down. Will it happen? Your guess is as good as mine, but I'm excited to see the attempt.
Yeah, I mean, St. Charles North, maybe not these kids, but they've played a lot of very good games against Catholic League teams over the years in the playoffs. I mean, I harken back to when Tyler Newman is now the New York Giants played, and they beat Mount Carmel in a very memorable state semifinal game. They obviously played Naz in the state championship game. There's a lot of familiarity there. And their coach, Rob Pomazek's been around. So I expect a very good game on Saturday night, and we'll see what happens. Should be a lot of fun. Should be nice to know that it's probably not going to be played in the rain. So we'll see. Should be a good one. Another 7A game that definitely keep an eye on. The game that I'm going to be at Saturday afternoon. Lincoln Way West going on the road to Downers Grove North. Downers Grove North obviously coming off of a really good win. But Lincoln Way West, man, they're a really good team. I think last year they had a good playoff run. They got to the second round, and I think that might have been one of those games where Michael Vanderleeuwen Guerin, kind of pulled a rabbit out of his hat.
First one, yeah.
That was one. But Lincoln Way West is back in the quarterfinals. They only have one loss, so that should be a really good game that I'm expecting to see.
Yeah, and I mean, they beat Penwood last week pretty handily, 43-20. They were one of the last teams in 7A to have an undefeated record all the way up until week 8 when they lost to Bradley Bourbonnais. But it's going to be a battle. It's going to be a battle between these two teams. Obviously, it took a rabbit getting pulled out of their hat or out of Patady's hat last season to take Lincoln Way West down. And I fully expect this to be a very highly contested game between these two teams.
Yeah, I mean that Lincoln Way West, they beat Kenwood pretty handily. That kind of like raised my antenna a little bit because I think Kenwood's a pretty good football team, and they won pretty significantly. You mentioned they only have the one loss. I mean, they have some playoff success. They were in a tough game last year, so should be a really competitive game. But I do like the way Downers Grove North is playing right now. I mean, they have to be coming off of a pretty big high, beating Glenbard West, and now they get to go home for a quarterfinal. I know that they were talking about that. They're like quarterfinal at Carson's Field next Saturday. So they're pretty excited about that one. So should be a lot of fun Saturday. Another game, keep an eye on Burlington Central coming off that big high, getting to the quarterfinals. Tough road assignment. That Fenwick team has been kind of like, I know Seuss has talked about it on his podcast with Matt Rodewald, that going into the year, there were some questions about how good Fenwick was going to be. They graduated Nate Marshall, who is one of the best players in the state. They might be better this year, though, without Nate Marshall. Jamin Williams, a really good quarterback. He's had a great year for them. They have two brothers, Tommy Thies and Jake Thies, have been really good playmakers for them. I mean, their only losses, is a pretty good set of losses. I mean, they lost to Montini, came down to a 2-point conversion. They gave Mount Carmel, maybe Mount Carmel's toughest test before the Loyola playoff game. And then they lost to Carmel as well. So, it's a tough one for Burlington Central. I will say that going to Fenwick.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you mentioned it. Fenwick is kind of on a roll. They haven't scored less than 20 points this season. I think no less than 28, if I remember correctly. Or no less than 24. And meanwhile, Burlington Central's highest amount of points that they've given up this season is 28 points, and that was to Prairie Ridge. So it's definitely going to be a battle between, who can break first, or who's going to break first, Fenwick's offense or Burlington Central's defense. And, I think whichever one makes the other break first is going to be the winner. So going to be interested to see how that turns out.
No doubt about it. Any other games you're kind of curious about?
I mean, I'm going to be keeping my eye on that St. Francis King game. I think I know what the result's going to be, but I'm interested to see how it turns out in terms of the score and stuff like that, because especially considering who's on the other side for that semifinal game, it might be important. So I guess, so I will be keeping my eye on that.
Yeah, I mean, I fully expect St. Francis to win that game. I will say that King, like week 2 or week 3, they played Rochelle, who was a really good team this year. Pretty good. They were pretty competitive. So they are probably, maybe not like the top 1 or 2 public league teams, but they're definitely a program that's made some progress. That said, I fully expect St. Francis to come out on top. So it happens. But yeah, a lot of good stuff this weekend. A lot of good stuff to look forward to. I will be back tomorrow to record my podcast with Seuss. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that Mount Carmel Lincoln Way East game that's the Saturday that he's going to be at. So until then, I think we're going to get out of here. For Joel Boenitz, I'm Josh Welge. Everybody have a great week and a great quarterfinal.